Welcome back to a new Skype Sanctuary. Bringing it back from the dead this time. Maybe. Possibly.
To be fair, the last episode was only like a month ago, so the length isn't as long as the year for the previous episode.
Good point. I am Stefan, and right here is Mr. The Real FTA.
How you doing, everybody?
And with us, we got a special guest, and someone who likes what we're about to talk about today just as much as us, Mr. The Uncle Silver, Greg.
Hey there, everybody. How's it going?
Making his FTCR debut, and he's gonna regret it as soon as we start talking.
Something's gonna break.
Something's gonna die.
Yeah, well then it'll join the army of the undead. I can just imagine White Walkers carrying receivers and mixers and microphones and all my equipment that's gonna end up breaking.
Find the Walker room. Yeah, we're talking about Game of Thrones.
Woo.
because I think like a month ago the finale to season 7 came out, and I was like, guys, we gotta do a discussion. There's so much I want to talk about, and then because this is us, takes us over a month to finally get to it.
In true FTCR fashion, this is like the fourth attempt for all of us to meet up. Mr. Derek from Game Explain was to be here, but to add some context, this is the day after the most recent Nintendo Direct, so he is unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your views on him, he is currently busy editing and writing like analysis videos for all kinds of Nintendo games.
Yeah,
so we salute him, but I'm also glad he's not here.
He's probably just playing Octopath Traveler.
I love Octodad.
Octodad. But to go on what Steven said, I think we're specifically here. We're just going to talk about season 7, because if we were to talk about the whole show, we'd be here for about 17 hours.
Whew.
And
That's
luckily, that's still pretty long. Although luckily, season 7. Oh, in terms of us talking about it, it was only 7 episodes, or was it 8 episodes?
7.
7. And I believe next season is going to be 6 episodes.
Yeah,
The final 6.
Yeah. And then
although we don't know how long those 6 episodes are going to be.
yeah,
They'd
could
be
an hour
like
and a half
2
each
hours
episode.
long.
I've heard they're going to be long. Like, again, it may be, because I'm not sure if they've even started filming them at all or editing. Because, well, I imagine at this point they're probably just still in the writing phase, if that. But I imagine
They've said they've written all the scripts, and filming is starting up in October.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's pretty good then.
I think
Considering
they're
that it's
planning,
2019.
They want it to come out by winter 20, like December 2018. I think is their goal.
Oh, I look forward to it. I mean, anything's better than what season 5 was. I was really not a fan of season 5.
I mean, season 5. Well, just like season 5 was like weird because it has a lot of stuff about it, but also has some of the best episodes in like the whole show. It's got Hardhome.
My problem with Game of Thrones is that I am probably what you would call a hashtag casual fan. I've seen all the episodes, but I rarely go back and like rewatch stuff. So most of aside from ingraining that, I was just bored through most of season 5. A lot of seasons just kind of gel together, and a lot of times like specific episodes I don't remember that well. It's crazy because before I watched the season 7 finale, I went back and watched the first episode just to see like how far things had changed, and I had forgotten most of the now dead characters that appear in episode 1.
That's a lot of characters too.
It's crazy how many characters are just flat out dead from the first episode to now.
They're either dead or they were like useless, so they just killed them off. Like they're either like actually they either served a purpose and died, or they're like these guys are useless now, just kill them off.
Their death was the purpose.
Or they've completely changed. I mean, like Tyrion. Oh, so we're gonna say from the beginning, this is obviously going to be a spoiler-filled podcast. Listen at your own risk, but it's crazy that Tyrion is just introduced, just drunk, getting a blowjob from a naked whore. Like it's just like his character now. Like I mean, obviously that part of him was most of his character for the first few years. But I could not imagine like Tyrion just getting like random blowjobs from prostitutes in like the current season. It just his character has just grown so much since then. It's great. Tyrion.
If you start now, you can't imagine the character that he was. When you watched it at first, you can't imagine him being the character he is now.
Yes,
it's such a trip.
It's weird because the Tyrion's whole like trajectory of the show has basically been like the best side character to being like the front and like basically kind of like the lead that like you look towards.
Yeah.
Then basically now this season he's like season 6 and season 7 he's essentially been pushed to the side to make way for the more important character, the more quote unquote story important characters.
Which I think is setting up for something very, very major, which we'll get into later. But I think that I think that a lot of the people who are going to be important in the end, that's where they are right now, is where we see them as off to the side. And I think that that's going to lead to something very major for season 8.
Yep.
That's why we'll get into that, though.
So I guess going back to, again, this is where everything just kind of gels together. For the life of me, I cannot remember what happened in episode 1 of season 7. It's been like 3 months since that happened.
I've got the Wikipedia page open just in case if I forget anything. That's the one. I know that. Well, that's the one that ends. Remember that ends with that long 5-minute like scene of Daenerys going to Dragonstone.
Oh yes.
Yeah, when she finally gets there, and the shall we begin?
A castle. We've seen this castle before.
Yeah, that was Stannis Baratheon. That's where he was staying.
Yep.
Which we didn't get to see as much of it when he was there. It was always some dark halls and a dark beach and a red witch.
He had a throne. It's like you never sat on that throne. You had it this whole time.
It was just a fancy director's chair. That's all it was. Because we never saw the throne that she sits on now. We never saw before.
Yeah, so that's why it was like, oh, he had a throne this whole time.
Well, his was because he just sat in a chair up by that big table.
Yeah, in the War Council.
Yeah, that's the only place we ever saw him at. Which is like, I don't know. I feel like you're a boring leader if you have this entire castle and this cool throne room, and that's the room you choose to sit in.
Well, I mean,
the throne
Stannis.
The throne isn't iron, therefore he doesn't care.
Yeah. You know, it's like owning a mansion and sleeping in the basement.
Yeah, you brought up something like remembering like, oh, what happens in each individual episodes. With Game of Thrones, it's always never really been what happens in each episodes. It's really more like each individual stories. Like it's more like, oh, there's like this character story and like what their whole season arc is. But with season 7, the most interesting thing is that basically now everyone's come together. So it's a lot harder to kind of split off like, oh, this character has this story, this character has this story, when they're basically all just one giant story.
Yeah, they're trimming a lot of the fat.
I mean, no, that's part of the reason why I loved season 6 1, because Bran wasn't in it, and he's always been my least favorite character.
Yeah,
but I think
much.
season 6 just started with like the first 2 episodes. They just killed so many characters off. To be like, this storyline's going nowhere. There's too many characters. There's too many pointless plot lines. Let's just murder 60% of them. Just so
actually,
we can streamline it.
Season 6 was the one Bran was in. Season 5 was the one Bran wasn't in.
Yeah, 5. I think he was completely absent from 5 until the very end.
6 was the one that had Hold the Door.
No.
Oh yeah, controversial hashtag hot take. I thought that was stupid as shit. Well, no, I mean the notion of Hodor sacrificing himself was great. I thought the flashback as to how like he started, the whole flashback thing of like Bronn time traveling and like Hodor goes back into his own body. I was just like that. To me, that was adding a element of kind of fantasy element of fantasy that had never been prevalent before, and it just felt like this is kind of coming out of nowhere. I mean, like, yeah, I know Bran is the three-eyed raven, and he can kind of pull the old Mario Odyssey and jump into people's bodies. But it just the fact that he was able to have Hodor do that as well, that to me was just like, no.
I
Question
think
mark?
I think it kind of works because it's showed that he's warged into Hodor's body before,
Yeah.
so you can kind of see he's like trying to warg into his body while he's like in the past, so that causes some weird like time fuckery. So he wargs into the young. He wargs into the young Hodor in the past, which causes like it screwing up in the future, and it's like that's how the whole thing happened.
Which I found interesting that I thought it was a little bit of a stretch to go from hold the door to Hodor. I thought that was a bit of a stretch. It introduced yeah, what's up?
I was gonna say the best thing about that, I read this article where all of the like foreign language versions of that had to, because obviously at the beginning like no one knew what Hodor meant, so all the different characters that kind of had like different sounding names, they had to like scramble to find some kind of sentence to fit in context of their language. I remember thinking that was a really funny article.
Now, but I think it interested. I know that there's a theory out there now. It introduced something very interesting where the idea is that what if, because there was Bran the Builder who built the wall.
Yeah.
So there's the idea that this three-eyed raven is the one who went all the way back and was the same Bran the Builder. But there's another theory that he went into Aegon Targaryen, or Aerys Targaryen, I'm sorry. And he
Mad King.
Yeah, he was trying to use the Mad King's power back then to stop the White Walkers. But all that got through was burn them all. So he's the one that drove the Mad King mad in the first place.
Yeah, there's like a whole bunch of theories related to Bran. Like you mentioned that Bran tried to warg into the Mad King. There's one that said that Bran becomes the Night King.
Yeah,
there's another
that's
one
the
that
one
said
that that's the one that I've like a lot. Most of my coworkers think that's the one. Like that's one name that he's gonna become the Night King, or he already is the Night King. Which I think it's a bit.
Like, yeah, I don't really like that because, well, I think the whole point. I wish there was more to the Night King instead of him just being, oh, he's like the book version of the Night King, which is how he was like he was like the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and he was in love with a White Walker, and then like the warden of the current king of the north and the king beyond the wall like teamed up to kill him, so he's like kind of like come back like so many years later. I think that's more interesting than just he was the first White Walker.
Yeah, I would appreciate it if he was one of the first three-eyed ravens.
That would actually make more sense. Like there's like a whole bunch. He's like what? It's like it's kind of like Doctor Strange, where he's like, oh, you're doing all these teachings, but it's all like you're being really hypocritical. So he like says, fuck you all, I'm gonna do my own thing.
Yeah,
take revenge, something like that.
With the actual three-eyed raven standing in as the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yep. Or the three-eyed raven's the ancient one.
Oh, there we go.
And Bran is Doctor Strange, and they're both crippled.
Yeah, he's also Dr. Boring.
and they both use time travel. They both use time travel. It all connects.
Sorry, Bran. No offense to I forget the actor's name. Isaac Hempstead, right? Yeah, no offense to you, but your character's boring.
Although
boring as shit.
The final scene.
He's as boring as actual Bran.
The final scene of the season where he's interacting with Sam, that was great.
It's probably the most I ever liked him, and at the same time, you know what's funny? I'm starting to disconnect from him even more. But as he's disconnecting from people, I'm understanding his character a little bit more. He feels more like less of a jerk, and more of, as he's becoming the three-eyed raven, he's not becoming Bran Stark. And that works for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest scene that shows that he is, well, one, really starting to lose his own humanity and who he is the scene where he's first reintroduced back to Sansa, and he's I'm going to truncate what he says, and it makes sense in context of the show. But he essentially what he says was, "I saw you the night you were raped. You look beautiful," which is like the most fucked up thing you could ever say to anyone. And like Sansa's reaction, it's just like, "That's fucked up, man. I'm gonna go." Like, okay, Brad, you keep sitting out here in the snow. I'm gonna go inside now. You fucking freak.
And then she goes inside, and it's like, I'm an assassin who takes people's faces.
You sit in your chair. I'm going to go sit in a different chair.
But I think Arya has slowly become, over the course of the show, she's become me and my wife's favorite characters.
She's
because in season 1 she's kind of just, I don't want to say stereotypical, but she was kind of just a one-note tomboy in a sense. She just wanted to do things that boys did, and that the what's the word I'm trying to say? Society was like, no, you're a girl, you have to do this stuff. But over the last few seasons, she's really grown as a strong character who can just murder the fuck out of anyone she wants, and that's just awesome.
I liked her from the beginning. One of the reasons was that, like you said, that she felt like the tomboy character. I didn't feel like she was the character that wanted to do it just because she wasn't supposed to. I felt like she was the character that wanted to do it because she liked to do it. Despite the fact that, because there are characters, a lot of the time when you get those sort of tomboyish characters, you get the impression that they're only trying to do it because they want to rebel. They're not supposed to do it, and that's why they want to do it. But she just liked being that way, the sword fighting and everything, and it just so happened, hey, you're not, in this society, you don't normally do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked her for that, and I like to see her. I was a little bummed out sometimes where we would come back to her, and she'd be all badass, and we didn't get to see that happen. I feel like we missed a lot of her fight montage. Her Rocky Balboa training montage when she was fighting Brienne.
Well, there was the time she was with the Hound during season 4, and then there was the 2 seasons she was at the House of Black and White.
Although 2 seasons?
It's 5 and 6. Yeah, it was 5 and 6.
Yeah, it was halfway
and she spent most of it getting her ass kicked.
Yeah, halfway through 5, and yeah, that's just it. We didn't see a lot of her high level training. We saw a lot of her getting the crap kicked out of her.
Well, she killed that one girl, and it's now you're a master.
Yeah, exactly. I think her killing that one character was kind of showing, because I guess just with a show of with this many characters and plot lines, sometimes they have to be a bit more economical with how they tell stories. And I think the fact that we had spent a season and a half of her doing some kind of training and losing, it would have gotten slightly boring. We just keep seeing her kill more and more people.
And I understand it, but it's just, when it's your favorite character that it's happening to, it does.
Totally. It's like,
it does.
Trust me, I would watch a whole spin-off of Arya
of just her.
Like training. Like I would be down for that shit. She's one of the best characters.
It still wasn't as bad as Daenerys being in Meereen for 3 whole seasons.
I thought that was that went on a little bit longer, considering that we knew she was eventually going to come to Westeros. It would have been it would have been different if they started to lead us into the idea that that's where she was going to stay. But we knew that wasn't going to be the case, so it started to feel like a waste of time, even though cool things happened.
Cool thing happened, but the nature of the story of the show, where if the writers, if say George R. R. Martin was ultimately leading her to stay on the island, you'd be like, why the fuck have we wasted so much time with her?
Yeah, exactly.
If she doesn't connect into the main story at all, that'd be a waste of everyone's time and money. Damn it, George.
It's also like I think like John's journey, like from season 1 to now, I think is one of the best of the show, because every season he does something different.
Yeah, there's a good amount of, I don't want to say a whole lot amount of character development, because he's still, at his core, he's still kind of the same person, just in these different situations.
But I think because I've like looked a lot of like people, like reception of people on the internet and stuff, and a lot of people really like because there's a lot of people that don't really like Jon because he's
Who are these bastards?
Yeah.
Who are these people who don't deserve this show?
They know nothing.
They know nothing.
You know nothing about Jon Snow, you wankers.
It's essentially that for a show that's basically gone this like so long of being like, oh, there's no main character, there's no hero, like anything can happen, to basically go that Jon Snow is the hero of the story. It's kind of making people go, eh. Not to mention that a lot of people think he's kind of boring and like what he does, but I disagree with that, because what he does and like his character isn't around like, oh, what is serving, unlike a whole bunch of other characters who are all about serving themselves. Jon is all about serving other people. Like, his whole, like, the reason he saves Winterfell isn't for like, well, that's a bonus, isn't like to get it back from the Boltons. It's because he's like, I need people to help me fight the White Walkers, because he knows that no matter what, they're the real enemy, and he wants to save everyone. So it's kind of like everything he does, like he goes and brings over the with the wildlings over across the wall, even though it leads to him getting quote unquote killed, because it's like, I need to protect them and I don't want the White Walkers to get any more people. It's like everything he does is essentially for the greater good, not for himself. So, which I think is like a really interesting thing especially for this kind of story, or even like characters like that we like Sansa and Arya. Pretty much their whole thing is all about them sticking up for themselves, not for the greater good.
They're there for Winterfell. They're not there for the Seven Kingdoms. They're there to protect Winterfell, which is fine. That's their purpose.
But Stefan, to a certain extent, I can understand the notion of like Jon Snow is the quote unquote hero, and so it's when you could get a situation like that, it's like in Game of Thrones they had not Game of Thrones, in Walking Dead, I think the producers have pretty much said that everyone is fair game to die except Rick. Was saying with that notion, it's like, well, then I never have to fear for Rick's safety. And then even though they did, end a season with Jon Snow getting stabbed, because I think the three of us keep up with the behind the scenes and like just Hollywood shit in general, because we knew Kit Harington was coming back next season. We're just like, well, he's clearly ain't dead. Like,
there's also this thought. There's also the thing, like, I've read the book. I've read that book before that season came out, so I knew that happened. And I'd read a whole bunch of book theories, and everyone's like, "Yeah, he's not dead. He's coming back. We just don't know how he's coming back.
In what
the book
capacity? Yeah, he could come back as a
there's the whole thing of like, because in the book we still don't know who his parents are, even though we do now. So it's kind of like that mystery is still like something that needs to be resolved in the books. So
I mean, even in the show, he doesn't know.
He doesn't know, but he's going to.
No one else knows. So the question becomes, who finds out, and what do they do when they find out? What does he do when he finds out?
What does he do when he finds out he's fucking his aunt?
Yeah.
Freak out. Question about that. Do you no? But going back to Greg's comment about no one knows. Do you think Tyrion knows? Because there's a moment where, again, in the last episode, where Jon and Khaleesi go into her room to get down to some sweet, sweet incest lovemaking. Like Tyrion has this look on his face where he's kind of. It's an odd.
He's
I think I know what it is.
He's concerned.
I think.
He's concerned.
Yeah, go.
Oh, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's a theory that people like put up that actually makes a lot of sense, is that Tyrion's been talking about with Daenerys how like, oh, she doesn't know if she can have a child, so like he's been worrying about succession. So people are saying that when he went to go talk with Cersei, their deal was that her child was going to be Daenerys' successor. So he's worried because if they have sex and she finds out, oh, she's pregnant, he's worried that if that happens, that's going to ruin their truce.
Yeah, I've heard that one. I think the one that I like is that he wanted
to fuck Daenerys, so he just said that he can't do it.
They want to keep the family reunion small, so they just intermingle. No, I think for me, my concern when I saw his concern was that he was talking to her about succession, and he had talked before about the Targaryen line and how it was. I don't know if he ever said it was cursed or anything, but just, we saw where that line went. It went down the path of madness, and it almost destroyed the Seven Kingdoms. It was. Yeah. I wonder if maybe he was comforted by the fact that she can't have kids. So when her reign is done, we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about a Targaryen line coming back and trashing the place. Now we kind of do.
Maybe, but I mean, I think just because Tyrion knows of his family and Cersei and thinking back to Joffrey, I would think Tyrion would be more apprehensive about the Lannisters staying in power based on how he knows how that family goes.
Well, I mean, he's
got Joffrey, but you also had Tommen and Marcella, who were perfectly fine.
Yeah, which he said. He said in one episode that they were totally okay. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't know that Jon is a Targaryen. So at this point, I think that he's just concerned about Dany having a kid, and then taking over when she's done, and that's here we go again. It could be the same old thing. And to me, that's what I felt like he was worried about. I know watching it myself, that's what I'm worried about. Even not knowing that he's a Targaryen, which, again, once that comes out, oh boy.
What I'm most interested is that, this whole show has been dedicated about Jon being like, I'm the bastard of Ned Stark, and I'm going to do everything that Ned Stark would do. Yeah. So when he finds out that, you're not Ned Stark's bastard, you're actually... you're not a bastard at all. You're the legitimate son of Rhaegar and Ned's sister. So basically, going to be like, I feel we're going to get some kind of existential crisis for him. It's like,
true, but I think
I do?
I think ultimately, based on who Jon is and how he was raised, I think he will have that. But I think he will still ultimately reach the conclusion that Ned Stark raised him.
Yeah,
and
he'll
for
do the right
intents
thing.
and purposes, he is his father. So I think we'll probably get maybe an episode of him questioning that. But then I think he will go back to, I'm going to follow in how my real father, or not my how his real father, the father who actually raised him, taught him how to be.
Yeah. That actually makes sense considering he had that exact talk with Theon in that final episode.
Yeah, and he
like, oh, you can have two fathers.
I mean, even when he refused in the last episode, what was it, the Dragon and the Wolf, when he refused what Cersei was asking, and Tyrion made the comment, have you ever learned a lie? And it's like, no,
that was a great moment.
And it's like, no, I was never taught to lie. I was taught not to lie. So, even in that tense situation, the teachings of Ned Stark came out, even if they're going to lead to the ruin of everybody.
That moment is great because Tyrion's on the verge of tears.
Tyrion.
Yeah.
He was Tyrion. Yeah, Jon Snow is probably as lawful good as exists in this show.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, he is as lawful good as he is one of the few people who is genuinely there for the people.
Yep.
But I do think I don't see him on the throne at the end. I think it's, to be completely honest, I see him on the throne before I see Daenerys.
Do you see him dying?
No, I don't see him dying.
I see it as possibility.
Well, because I can't remember if it was before the episode aired. I can't remember, and this is why I'm glad both of you is here. Because I think, Stefan, I think you were involved in this. Because Greg, you were like, you thought Cersei was gonna die.
I was like,
motherfucker, she's gonna die. It's too early. And
yeah.
Stefan was like, I don't know, maybe. I was like, nope.
Nope. Yeah.
I was pretty sure.
Although honestly, like when I was like, because that's when I thought that the whole scene of like when Jaime's like running off after she does her betrayal, I thought he was gonna like do the deed and then leave, but it's like, oh nope, you got Mega Mountain there. It's like you can't do anything. Although for a second, I thought she was actually gonna kill Tyrion or Jaime.
I thought she was gonna kill Jaime.
I didn't think Tyrion. I thought maybe Jaime. Again, the thing is, just in terms of how these TV show works, and I know that to a certain extent they're beholden to the books, but I guess not anymore because there
is no book. Yep.
Although I, from what I understand, George R. R. Martin has said has told them their basic plan. So I believe what the show does will slightly be like what's going to be in the books, or I'm sure there'll be differences as there was in the show, even when it was adapted.
The ending, well, like the final ending is probably going to be like that. That's why a lot of people are saying that a lot of the season's been kind of rushed because they're essentially just leading up to the end game that they know that the book is going to be.
Which to
Like
me
that
is
was
more like
with
cutting out the filler.
with the whole Beyond the Wall episode. They're like, oh, in the end game involves an ice dragon, so they're like, well, we got to have an ice dragon.
Well, excuse me, sir, but in the book, like
nothing
yeah,
happens in the book.
Nothing. You we're all on the
thing
same
that happens
playing
in the
field
book
right
is
now.
John dying. Everything else is new.
That's why we're all on the same playing field right now, and I like it.
Yeah, it was great because again, when I was working and back when it was still adapted from the books, you would have those smug assholes just talking about where in the book this happens. Like, motherfucker, it's just a TV show. Shut up, all right? But again, I think because I've talked about this with other people, and I think the notion of like these shorter seasons and just getting to the end quicker is more of a thing from say possibly from say certain things like actors and say people who work on the certain people who work on the show versus just because HBO would want to extend this as long as they can because it is like one of the most successful shows ever made. But
Well,
I think it's a lot of maybe because again like 8 years is a long time, is a pretty long time for a show, especially one as intensive if it's like intensive shootings like this one. So I could see certain actors like Kit Harington being like, I don't want to spend 3 more years on that giant fucking ice rock. I want to go do other stuff, please. Man, I may be wrong, but that's just kind of how that's part of the reason why I think they're gonna do shorter seasons and end it like sooner rather than later.
From what I read is that like back when they were still doing 10 episodes a season, people would ask them, oh, why don't you do more seasons and why don't you do more episodes? You can have like more story in the seasons. And they literally said they want to, but they can't because their filming schedule is so like grand and like big that it takes like they start filming like it's an 11-month like filming post-production like release schedule, and they only have enough time to do those 10 episodes. They don't have enough time to do any more. So it's like, and now with all these these like 7 episodes and 6 episodes, they're so big and grand in scope that they only have enough time to do 7 episodes, or else they're going to need like another 2 years to do it. And
even that, or just HBO would have to just give them a lot more money to greatly extend the crew. And you know, I'm sure that the show is making more money than Jesus, but I'm sure HBO just want to maximize their profits by not spending too much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because I mean, like they're spending enough money so we can have lots of dragons and White Walkers, but not
too many
enough
dragons, if you ask me. Too many bloody dragons this season.
But not enough money for a direwolf. Apparently, direwolves are too expensive, but you can have like a whole bunch of dragons and White Walkers.
Well, I
you
forget.
got to animate each hair.
Would the direwolves all CG, or were they just like actual animals?
In the first few seasons, they were like animals that were like digitally like they use like they were
Resized, maybe.
digitally
Made bigger. Okay.
Yeah. So they're like, I believe like the scene where Arya sees Nymeria, I'm pretty sure that's not like a CG wolf. It's just like a dog that's like bigger.
They're just
Bigger,
regular
yeah.
size. She's just really small.
They did Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
They did.
like
just,
weird perspectives.
Yeah, you shoot the wolf closer.
The dog in the center frame, and they had the actress stand like 500 feet backwards, just so she'd look much smaller in comparison.
It's just like, 'cause I don't think they've ever explained that. Oh, why don't you have more of the direwolves? Like we assume it's because of money, but it's like, bitch, look at that dragon. Look at look at John touch that dragon.
You know,
have money.
You know what it is?
Where's Wolf? Where's Wolf? Because with those, I forget it was
Ghost. Where's
Ghost.
Ghost?
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
that's
Ghost
the
is-
Ghost.
I think
I've
Ghost
seen
is the
Ghost
last
in like
one.
2 seasons. What the hell?
Yeah, Ghost and Lemuria are the last 2 left alive, I guess, right? I believe.
Yeah,
I think it's Lemuria.
because like Lemuria, as we saw, is just gonna wander in the woods again. But I guess Ghost is still at the wall. So hopefully, I hope to God they don't pull a head wig and it's be like, oh yeah, they get killed off screen. Okay.
He is white.
Oh no.
That's not a
I mean,
racial
like, was
joke.
it,
His fur is
Rick-
white. Just covering my bases.
especially because the direwolves started off like, oh, they're so important, like they're like one of the first things you see in the first episode, and now they completely forgot about them.
It's funny because I always took them when they started killing them off. I kind of took the wolves to represent each of the kids' sort of innocence. So what would happen is, whenever the kids were going through a major change, something would happen to the wolf. It would run off or it would get killed. For John, for instance, John's been able to hang on to his innocence and his goodness, I guess you would say, for longer than everybody else. Arya willingly pushed it away. So when she finally met up with Lemuria chose to walk away. She didn't hurt her or anything, but she just walked away.
That's not you.
Summer was killed. You had these situations where
Summer was killed defending defending Bran, and immediately after that was when Bran lost everything. That's when he became Three-Eyed Raven. So
no, Summer was killed when she attacked Joffrey.
Oh no, that was Lady.
No, she didn't know. Yeah.
Oh, that was Lady. I'm sorry.
It was Arya's wolf attacked her, and then the king was like, "Kill them all," and then I was like, "Oh shit, fucking go away."
Yeah,
don't kill my wolf.
So it's interesting to see that I like the wolves as representatives of their sort of innocence, and then something happens to the wolf, and that the character is or has gone through a major change.
And then Shaggy Dog gets killed off screen, so you're like, well, Rickon's dead.
Yeah, looks like neither one of them learned how to zigzag.
I blame him for dying. Like, you dumb shit! You don't just run a straight line, you idiot! You zigzag.
Even if he did that, Ramsay would have killed him anyway.
Still,
he
put some effort into it.
He was just toying with him. Like he's a good shot with a bow and arrow.
Put some effort into it.
Yeah, but if he would have zigzagged and then done some cartwheels and backflips and shit,
yeah, because Rickon is gonna do some backflips.
You don't fucking know what Rickon's capable of, Stefan. Don't assume. You don't know what Rickon can do.
It's Westerosi ninjutsu.
He didn't go to the House of Black and White.
He just studied gray.
He just followed Nymphadora Tonks around.
Yeah, and look at what it got her too.
Got stabbed in the neck. With scissors.
That was years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was in season 6 because she disappeared
last year. You sure?
She disappeared at the end of season 3. So she left at the end of season 3. They were gone for 3 seasons, and season 6 she showed up for 1 episode, tried to kill Ramsay, and died.
Oh yeah, well first she tried to seduce him, and then she tried to kill him. Then he was like, "LOL, no, stab."
Reek told me what you did.
Get reeked.
Oh, I miss Reek.
He needs to die.
I miss Reek.
He's such a piece of shit. Again, going back to the first episode, I forgot how close he was with the Starks, and it's just like even back then he acted like a complete piece of shit to everyone. I'm like, this motherfucker needs to die.
Oh yeah,
violently and painfully.
He's needed to die for a while, and you know what's funny though? Because of everything he's been through, I don't mind if he doesn't die.
No, I do.
I feel
he's still a piece of shit and needs to die.
He's gonna die saving Yara's life. Yeah. That's what they're going to do. He's gonna save Yara, gonna kill Euron, and probably gonna die in the process.
Good. He needs to die.
I definitely think he's gonna die. I definitely think that he's going to end up saving Yara. The question is how. Will he kill Euron? Will he die against Euron, but that gives Yara a chance to then kill him? Or I'm interested to. For the first time, I'm genuinely interested to see where his story takes him and where his story takes us.
I kind of feel like they should have wrapped up the Greyjoy stuff now, because it just kind of feels like we only have 6 episodes to go next season, so we got whatever Cersei's going on, we have everyone fighting the White Walkers, and then you got Theon and the Greyjoys fighting Euron. It's just kind of like you don't really need that because it's kind of separated from everything.
Well,
as long as it's slow and painful, I don't care how he dies.
I mean, it's not even technically the Greyjoys fighting him.
The Greyjoys fighting Greyjoys.
Yeah, well, that's just it. At this point, is Theon even really a Greyjoy? You know, if he, I here you go. Here's a good. I'll give you a good last scene. He's dying, so I know you like that.
Yep.
But he says, I tried to bring honor to the Greyjoy name or something, and they say you're not a Greyjoy, you're a Stark. You know what I mean? That's sort of.
I just.
Obviously it won't be literally, but
Yara's not gonna. I feel if he's gonna die, it's gonna be with Yara, and Yara's not gonna say that.
John would though. So even though John can't even
he's like completely on the opposite side where John is right now.
Yeah.
So unless he comes back to like let's fight the zombies all together, kind of seem like.
Well, if he kills Euron in front of all of his men, they would probably follow Theon.
Well, he's gonna tell them to follow Yara.
Oh, which he would definitely
because that's
lead
the
them
on
to.
thing. He's like, I'm not fit to lead. I'm fit to serve.
I'm fit to die painfully. That's what I just
follow my sister. We have similar parts.
That's the best conclusion to a dickless arc is using it to.
Stefan, that's the most brilliant thing you've ever said. That's great.
That was just great when he's fighting him and he tries to kick him in the dick and he's like, "Wait a minute, I've got nothing. I'm invincible."
It kind of reminds me of the episode of King of the Hill where Bobby keeps kicking people in the dick and he tries on pegging it doesn't work. Although I forget, like the person he fights, like, did you think because I'm gonna assume that he's meant to be dead now, and then when they ride off, I was like, that was like the weakest punch to the face I've ever seen. How is that guy dead?
Of writing. That's how that guy's dead. A wizard did it.
I get you.
A wizard did it.
But I want to get.
You mean a red? The Lord of Light did it.
The Red Priest. There we go.
The Red Woman did it. But I want to get into a thing where, so there's only 7 episodes, but 3 of them end. I'm pretty sure it was 3. Yeah, 3 episodes. I think this season end with, a big battle. A major character, normally Jon Snow or someone else, is about to get murdered by an opposing army. At the last second, Daenerys comes in with her dragon and saves the day. Which again, I love the dragons. It's always good to see them, but I felt they've really overplayed that card this year. Where like the 3rd time it happened, I was just like, okay, like we've seen this so much this season now. Like it's boring and lazy, really. The fact that they played that card so many times this season.
It's the first one was Daenerys going to Dragonstone. The second one was the Greyjoy attack, the great Euron's fleet attacking the other Greyjoys and the Sands and the Dornish.
Yeah.
Episode 3 was the one where they took over. Is the one where Jamie's fleet.
The battle of
Jamie's people took over.
The battle of the Loot Train.
The one where Jamie was involved. That I think that was the best use of the dragons. The last one you're gonna say is necessary for plot purpose, but I think that the one involving Jamie, just because there were people you cared about on both sides, which I think made that fight.
I wasn't talking about. I was talking about the episode 3 was the one with Olenna, where he poisons her, and he goes with her going.
That was a great ending. That was a great ending.
Yeah, that wasn't a dragon ending though. That was the
dragon ending was episode 4.
Yeah, that was the Unsullied.
Episode 4 had the best use of dragon, but the way it's fact that when it hurt, no, I made sure it won't. I fucking knew.
Yeah, she was a beast. She was a beast from beginning to end.
I love that even when she loses, she wins.
Even when she loses,
that's why Olenna is the best.
She made sure to drink the potion first and then told him. Like that's man.
Just say though, thank God she was able to say everything. Before I honestly thought when she was halfway through, Jamie was just gonna take his sword out and stab her in the head. Like part of me thought that was what they were, because he, as you can understand, he looked visibly pissed. So the one thing about Joffrey's death that always made me think Cersei, like it kind of made me think less of Cersei as a character for a while. I mean, yes, she was distraught over her son dying, but there was really there was really no sustainable evidence to support the theory that Tyrion killed him.
She just hated him. She just hated him, and it was a reason to hate him.
It was like she hated Tyrion. He had a reason, like she had a reason to kill. He had a reason to kill him, and also he gave him the cup that killed him. So
yeah, but my thing about that though is that like Joffrey asks for that. That's the thing. Joffrey demands that drink. If he hadn't said anything, he wouldn't have died. Which is why I'm like, Cersei, like again, like I know it's been well established you hate your brother because you blame him for the death of your mother, and he's a dwarf, and you people don't like that. But use your fucking eyes, woman. Like,
but to be fair, Joffrey was asking to be killed from episode 1, so.
Well, again, the thing that made Tyrion my favorite character was in the first season. He just slaps Joffrey around the face. Like you were going off your sympathies to those women. Now then, when he's king and he slaps him, he goes, "You can't hit me. I'm the king." And he goes, "Oh yeah," just smacks him again in the face.
He snaps it. He's like, "Did my hand fall off?" He's like, "Did my hand fall off? Because I struck the king."
It's like, oh yeah, this guy's my hero. The Tyrion posters are going up.
And at the wedding, you'll be fucking with a wooden cock.
Yeah, he never failed to push the buttons.
Best character.
There were 2 amazing Tywin scenes when he when he talks shit to Joffrey. There's the one scene where Tywin goes to see him when he's sitting on the throne, and Joffrey's like, "Oh yeah, why'd you move the council room to like up where you are?" He's like, "Because I want to work." He's like, "Well, but I don't want to walk all the way up those stairs." And then Tywin just walks up towards the Iron Throne to like look down on him. And he's like, "We could have you carried if you so would like that." And then there's the final episode that's right after the Red Wedding, where Tywin's just like giving him shit the whole time, and then like makes him go to bed without having his supper.
He's such a baby.
So he's just screaming, "I'm not tired."
Any king who has to say "I am the king" is no king.
Is no true king. That's the best line.
It's funny. I kind of wish Tywin was alive to see Tyrion as he is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder. I've always believed that Tywin would have liked Tyrion if Tyrion wasn't a Lannister.
Yeah.
I think that he would have appreciated what he brought to the table a lot more if it wasn't for his birth being the source of so much trouble.
The problem with me though is that obviously he had to die, but what cuts me is the fact that that's what broke the relationship of Tyrion and Jaime. It's like they were so close because like Jaime was like the one Lannister who truly loved his brother, and then that just obviously I think this season kind of shows that that's been once Jaime starts to learn more of the truth, that starts to be slightly repaired, but just it breaks my heart like the first episode of I think it's season 6 where Jaime's just like, if I see him again, I'm gonna fucking kill him. It's like, oh no, the one family member who loved him now hates him. No.
And then when they see each other in this season, and he's just like trying to hold back tears and just like, "What do you want?"
Yeah.
It's like, just don't try to explain to me.
Don't, man, just don't.
Same with when Tyrion has that one-on-one with Cersei, and she's like, so and he's like, "I loved your kids." Like, not Joffrey, obviously, but like the other 2, I loved them, man. You have no idea.
Yeah, I think he's definitely one of my favorite characters.
Without question, he is my. It won't happen, but I want him on the throne at the end. Like, there's no way it would happen, but I want him on the throne.
Now,
my theory, I think he's going to be the last character to die.
So okay, so you don't see him.
Gone,
he's like the final blood that's spilled.
He'll have to die. I think just thematically, they'll. I think either him or Jon Snow. I don't think they'll kill both of them, but I think either Tyrion or Jon Snow, will be one of the last big traumatic deaths.
I think Daenerys has a bigger chance of dying than Jon.
Think so?
Yeah, because I feel like
as long as Cersei dies, I'm good.
No way is she gonna survive all of this. Although it is Game of Thrones, so sad endings are par for the course.
But Cersei just doesn't. There's like everyone wants to kill her now. There's no. If she survives, I'm gonna be like, oh, you bastards! She kept
Well-
her
Well,
alive.
first you gotta get rid of the mountain,
Well,
which we all know what that means.
you
Clegane Bowl.
Woo! Well, let me ask you. This raises an interesting point. Who do you see on the throne? Final shot of the series. Camera pans out with the person sitting on the throne. Who's in that chair?
Since season 1, the show especially, because the first 5 seasons always ended with Daenerys. Like I've always been under the assumption that that's who they're pushing towards. Although again, because as you said, this is Game of Thrones, that could just be like a very elaborate prank.
That's the
You
biggest
know?
the biggest rope-a-dope ever.
Yeah,
You wanna know-
I would say if the show goes to the way I think most fans are expecting, I could see her. I could see Khaleesi, Breaker of Chains, the Unsullied, which
name
which
is
I can
so
say
long.
quick aside. One of the funniest things I've ever laughed at is when
Yes.
Jon Snow first meets her, and her's like, this is Khaleesi, the mother of dragons, the Breaker of Chains, and then this.
Yeah, I'm
know what?
gonna learn all of that one day.
I-
Unburnt
My mind is blanking on the guy's name who goes with John.
Davos.
So Davos just goes and
Davos
goes,
Seaworth.
This is Jon Snow. Like that was like one of the fucking funniest things.
And then he's just like ... He's king of the north.
He's king of the north. This is-
He'll get there.
I just love that slight pause where he kind of looks at her, looks to John, looks back. This is Jon Snow. Like that was perfect. That was like perfection of like comedic timing. That was so funny. But yeah, going back, I think we'll get Daenerys, or if they want to pull like a M. Night Shyamalan plot twist, the Night King ends up on the throne.
I was thinking Bruce Willis.
Samuel Jackson just comes back as Mr. Glass to take the throne.
Now, who do you think?
So is this split?
So-
This is my theory. There isn't going to be someone on the Iron Throne. The Iron Throne's going to be destroyed.
Ooh, good. Yeah,
That's
you know what?
interesting.
My thing is that it's going to be something going to happen. The Iron Throne is destroyed, and the end of the show is basically what happened. What Westeros basically becomes what it was before the Targaryen rule, in
7
which
kingdoms.
everyone is split up into like their own separate kingdoms.
so
There's a king of the north, there's a king in the south, there's Daenerys as the queen of King's Landing taking care of all the people. There's basically, it's like there is no one king of the 7 king. There's no king of the ruler of the 7 kingdoms. It's 7 kingdoms.
Stefan, I take back my earlier notion. You know,
It's like, I like
I can
yours.
actually totally see that. I can totally see that
I
happening.
like that.
That way, everyone gets to be king or
Yeah.
queen. It's a happy ending for everyone.
Especially because how the end of like this season go, where it goes like, oh, Jon Snow, who is Aegon Targaryen, ha ha ha, he's the true king, like
realistically,
person
he
supposed to
should
be
the
on
true
the
king.
Iron Throne. But the whole thing is that Jon doesn't want to be king.
Yeah,
Like,
which
I feel like even if people like find out about that, he's gonna be like, well, I mean that's cool and all, but I'm not gonna be king. So that kind of like.
Which I feel
Well, I
like
mean-
would make him a good king. I think the idea that he doesn't want the responsibility means that if it's forced upon him, I feel like he would do a good job.
Totally. You know what, Greg? I mean, I think that's one of my favorite points about Jon. And I think to go back to what Stefan said earlier about the second point people don't like about Jon, but he always does what's good. I love the fact that he's a reluctant hero. He never asks to be put forward in these situations. People just, because of the strength of his character, always elect him to lead. First, leader of the Night's Watch, which didn't end as well for him, we all know. And then when he becomes king of the North, like, he doesn't want to do stuff, but when he has kind of, destiny thrust upon him, he just tries to do what he thinks is best for everyone, not just for her. Which is one thing I would say about Daenerys. I've been behind her. She's been my girl the last 6 seasons. This season, and you can kind of understand why they did from a character perspective. She starts to be less like what's best for the people and more just like what's going to get me on the throne, which was a slight deviation, which I didn't necessarily love. when she's just like, I'm gonna just fucking murder everyone
Well, that's
until I'm on that throne. Which
I think it's interesting because it was kind of seen like the whole thing of like, oh, her being on the Iron Throne wasn't really her goal. It was her brother's, and it was something
Yeah.
she kind of inherited. So I think by her perspective, it's basically she's like, I've gone too far. This is my goal that I've basically been following my whole life. Like, I need to see this to the end, no matter what.
yeah. Which
So I think
I was
it's
feeling,
more so she's doing it out of principle for the fact.
which I was feeling a few seasons ago when she really started talking, when she was gearing up to get over to the Seven Kingdoms. There was a lot of talk, especially towards the, I forget what season it was. It might have been season 4, and there was a lot of talk from her about coming across with dragons and soldiers and essentially destroying as she goes. And I remembered thinking, I'm a huge fan of character development. I love to see characters change from everything you expected. So I remember thinking, have we been rooting for the bad guy this whole time? Because if any other character in any other show was to say, I'm going to go to this kingdom and I'm going to kill everybody who doesn't agree with me until they bend the knee, they would be the villain.
Yep.
So, is that what's going on? Have we been building up to this villain character as a major twist?
I think the only thing that, to be slightly fair, the only thing that's kept Daenerys from going into complete villain territory is the fact that the people and places she does ended up murdering or burning to the ground are just like pieces of shit. Like, she to this day, she, with the possible exception of I guess Sam's brother, when she murders most of the people she kills and the army she destroys are quote unquote evil. You know, like she hasn't fully gone to the dark side of just slaughtering anyone. Like, she hasn't killed anyone.
Yeah. And what was Sam's brother's name?
Dickon.
Sorry.
That was great, just because of Braun's reaction to the name.
Had to quote my favorite line from Braun.
He just laughs and then walks away.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've had an interesting idea though about who sits on the throne in the end, and I think about who has been really fighting for the people, who has been the one that is doing everything they can for the sake of the people, because they should probably be the one in charge.
Littlefinger.
No, oh God. Yeah, there you go. You know what though? You're not far off. I honestly wouldn't mind seeing Varys on the throne at the very end of it, because he is chaotic good, but he is that totally. For as long as we've seen him, he is a shifty, shady character who you think is looking out for himself, but really he is doing everything for the people. And he had a great speech with Daenerys about that. And I think that Varys on the throne would do amazing things for Westeros. And
you think, though?
I don't think it'll happen. No, I don't think it'll happen.
No. I mean, but do you think, though, in context of the show, he'd take it? Because he isn't really one to cover the direct spotlight. He normally, in terms of how he operates, he normally prefers to be kind of behind the scenes, just pulling strings. I don't think he. I mean, I guess if he was made king, people would have to do what he wants. But as a character and as a plot device, he's less effective when people see exactly what he's doing.
I think he's more of like the guy who he works as more like a hand, where he's the one who actually he's the one who does all the work, but he's not like the face.
See, but I see him as that only because he believes that's where his place is. For now, that's where he can do the most good. But I think if the situation arose where he had the opportunity to be the one in charge, I don't think he would stop being who he was. I think he would still have little birds everywhere. I think even as king, he would still be the head of the biggest spy network around. But yeah, I think that, I don't know if it would, I doubt it would happen, but if I had to pick one that I wanted, I would put Varys up there for the sake of the people. because
You know what,
good
Greg?
God knows nobody
I
else is
never
up there.
thought of him at all in that context, but yeah, kind of. I
mean,
mean, again, I can't see that ever happening. But if it, as a twist ending, if it were, I guess I'd be okay with it.
I think a lot of people would be okay. I think a lot of people would see it and be surprised, and then look back at everything he did. You know, very Severus Snape. You know, where he almost came across as the jerk the entire time, and then when you finally got to the end and realized that he was doing it for the good of everyone, you look back and think that guy was the hero of the story.
I'd say someone like, I'd say kind of Jamie kind of did that already, where he was like the one that everyone hated, like, oh, he's the Kingslayer. He maybe possibly sort of fucks his sister.
Maybe. I think it's flat out.
I'm talking about how people react to him, like how people, like the characters in the story, think of him.
Well, that's just it.
Gotcha.
I think
then we find out that, oh no, he's actually much more complex, and it's like he's really doing this. He wants to do good for the people,
which he did do good. You know, in being the Kingslayer. I mean, when he was explaining to Brienne, in being the Kingslayer, he did do good. Because he did believe in his heart, and he really was, that he was protecting the people from this guy that wanted to burn families in their beds. You know, he was pretty heroic, and quite the handsome devil.
I guess, but I mean, I think one of the things that a lot of people won't be able to get over is when he, you know, pushes Bran out that window.
Oh yeah,
that is still like, he does not deserve to be king.
Oh no, I don't see him surviving the series. No, absolutely not. No,
I wonder what will happen if they meet up. Like, I'm really curious to see what happened if they end up like meeting up again, Jamie and Bran.
I think the way Bran's character is going now, and as we said, the fact that it seems he's losing his humanity / identity and becoming more of a three-eyed raven. I don't see him being angry, because I think he'll see it.
He'd probably say thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
He would probably see it more in the big picture of, if he hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be where I am now. And kind of like the world, I guess in his view, the world needs a three-eyed raven. So he'd probably be like, thank you for crippling me and making me go on the worst journey of my life.
There's a sentence I never thought I'd say.
I just thought of someone else who could potentially, if there is still an Iron Throne, who could potentially take it and who has a claim to it. Gendry. The last Baratheon.
It's you know what, my problem with that is that the Baratheons, while Robert was king when the show started, he did take it from Aerys Targaryen. So
also, like, the whole reason that he was able to become king, because Robert was like related to, like, he was like blood related to like the Targaryens in some way. I forget exactly what, but he was related to them in some way. So that's why Robert had a claim to the throne.
Okay.
So it wasn't like he just took it.
And you know what? I love the guy. I love the character, but I don't know, Gendry, it's a little boring. I mean,
yeah, I would say totally. He is a pretty dull character.
I mean,
yeah, like it's not really he's not really like the most interesting character, but it's kind of like, when you think about it, like, he's just a regular, like, it's like, oh, he's just like an average, like, just regular guy.
He's just
like,
a regular working stiff like us, Governor.
Who can run
with a hammer.
Who can run his ass off. How did he make it back to the wall? He
gets his hand dirty.
How did he make it back to the wall to warn, to help send a raven about the guy stuck back there, in a quarter of the time it took them to get there in the first place?
Okay, that's the biggest complaint we've been like forgetting about mentioning, is the whole
timeline.
Points all over Westeros.
Yes, the timeline just doesn't, unless there are tiny little wormholes that allow these people to get there. It just doesn't work.
And also, how long were Jon Snow and his crew like trapped beyond the wall? It must have been. I would like,
couple days.
I mean, how long would it take the Raven to get that far? I mean, you could argue that Daenerys on her dragon could probably get there in like a couple hours, but how long would it take that little raven flying like that?
You know what,
Also,
though?
it's worth remembering with that scene is that they had to have been there long enough for the whole like river to freeze up again.
Yeah. You know,
so it has to have been like a couple days.
And then, I mean, it's going to take Daenerys a few hours at least to get there. She's going to take 2 hours through baggage claim.
Dragon claim.
You know she's going to set off the metal detector. It's just going to be a whole big production. That's a whole episode.
I would love to see Daenerys trying to get her dragons through customs.
Do you have any animals or any living creatures with you? No. And then her suitcase just starts shaking really violently.
It's fantastic beasts and where to hide them.
I think one of the things that Game of Thrones has just cemented in my mind, and I can say this as an Englishman, is that in this day and age, just the notion of a royal family is outdated and fucking stupid. You know, like, it's so dumb that people like, just because of my bloodline, I deserve to just rule over everyone else. It's such a stupid notion.
See, I don't know. Between Game of Thrones and Walking Dead, I think the lessons that I learned the most is that pretty much every actor out there is British.
Except for Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who's just there.
He's like honorary British just because he's in everything. I'm expecting him to be the voice of one of the dragons in season 8.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan is a very British-sounding name, so he gets a pass on that alone.
Good point.
She gets on top of the dragon.
Everyone's either British or British doing an American accent.
She gets on top of the dragon, and all you hear is, "White Walkers, we need to shut that down." With barbed wire wrapped around the tail.
Yes. He voices the Night King's dragon. He voices Viserion.
Speaking of that, you know, so I mean, obviously, when they flew over the wall, I think a lot of people expected something to happen to one of the dragons. But did you? Maybe this is just me, and I guess how video games work in my mind. Did you guys expect that dragon to breathe ice, not fire? Because
I kind of expected. Well, I kind of expected. Like, is it going to be fire? I didn't know if it was going to be ice or if it was going to be blue fire.
Yeah,
but it looked like it was blue fire.
Yeah, blue fire. Because it kind of has to be, because you wouldn't be able to have that dragon knock down the wall with more ice. You just make it stronger. Well, so I guess in that regard, it kind of had to be fire.
To be honest, I had this discussion before with somebody about what that was. I just kind of took it as a sort of like a really strong concussive blast. Okay. You know what I mean? It didn't melt the wall so much as blew it to pieces.
So would you equate that more to maybe Godzilla's atomic breath?
Sort of, yeah.
It destroys everything in its path.
Yeah, it's less fire and more just FU pouring out of its mouth.
Which I guess, in the grand scheme of things, if Daenerys hadn't come with her dragon, like, Jon Snow and his little crew would have been lost, but the wall would probably still be standing, because they say that wall's been there for 6,000 years and it's gone through multiple winters. I mean, would the army of the dead really have been able to breach that wall without that dragon?
Well, I mean, no. they could have still taken out through. They still could have gotten through Eastwatch. They just would have had a harder time breaking through Eastwatch.
Very bony bottleneck. Yeah, I think that the dragon facilitated.
It made it go faster.
Yeah,
I still think they probably would have gotten through.
It made a bad situation a lot worse.
And it maybe killed Tormund. Where's Tormund? Is he alive?
And for any World of Warcraft, for any World of Warcraft fans out there, was that blue dragon? Was that not the most Lich King moment in all of that show? I don't know if you guys are Warcraft fans. There was an expansion.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, there was an expansion called Wrath of the Lich King. I think it was probably the 3rd expansion, and the whole expansion looked like Lord of the Rings, but the trailer for it, which was the intro for that expansion, had the Lich King go out to an ice field and raise a blue skeletal zombie dragon out of the ice. And fly over, and it was the first thing I thought when I saw it.
No,
All I thought was that the Night King finally got his Yu-Gi-Oh card working.
his blue eyes white dragon.
His Blue Eyes White Dragon.
In terms of predictions for next and the final season, how do you think the battle with the White Walkers will be prolonged over the entire series, or do you think they'll do one of their many, like, just one episode is a battle type of thing?
I think it's going to be like the first episode's going to be like set up, and then the end is going to be like getting ready for a battle. Then like the bunch of the episodes are going to be like mini battles at like certain castles like around like the north and whatever, and then the second to last episode will be like a big 2-hour action spectacular, maybe at King's Landing, maybe like somewhere else. And then the final episode will be the Lord of the Rings multiple endings, concluding everything.
I just, at this point, all I want to see with the dragons is just the two normal dragons taking an ice dragon.
So Daenerys riding one,
that.
Daenerys riding one, Jon riding one, and Night King riding the other, just flying above everything while
Just
everyone
turns
fights.
into a fucking Spyro the Dragon cutscene.
A Legend of Spyro cutscene.
Oh God, can we not talk about that, please?
I don't know.
Skylanders.
I don't know what they'll use for the final set piece. I don't know if it's going to be the battle for the Seven Kingdoms or the battle against the White Walkers. I don't know how they're going to play it. I do have a major prediction for that season, though, and this is something I touched on earlier. I've had a feeling now that Season 8 is going to be the season of betrayal. I think we're going to see Jaime kill Cersei.
Yep.
I think we're going to see...
He has to.
I think we're definitely going to see Clegane Bowl.
Yep.
I honestly think we're going to see either Tyrion or Varys turn on Daenerys, thinking that she is...
Tyrion would? I don't know if...
Yeah.
I don't know if
you know
Tyrion
what?
would.
I think he would for something you mentioned earlier. If turning on her protects Cersei's child. Or if he thinks it will. And again, if he thinks that a Targaryen child would create havoc, I see them, because Varys mentioned before when he had a meeting with her that he would look out for the people no matter what, and she said, if I start to do something crazy, you basically let me know. So I feel like we're going to see tons of betrayal for the good of the people, but yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of backstabbing, some of it very literal.
Everyone just takes turns stabbing Jon Snow again.
but it's not Jon Snow, it's Kit Harington on set.
You aren't allowed the career after show.
They're just stabbing him with bananas from craft services.
I just thought of this right now of something that could happen. It could be maybe kind of similar to what happened like the end of Robert's Rebellion, where they're like, "Oh, let us into let us into King's Landing," and that's when they open, like when Tywin tricks the Mad King to then they siege King's Landing. I'm thinking something like that might happen, where everyone needs to get into King's Landing to get away from the White Walkers, but Cersei won't open the doors. So then Jaime ends up convincing her to open the doors, and then he stabs her.
Yeah, which lets in Clegane, lets in Brienne.
And I would love it if the White Walkers just make a giant ice horse, leave it outside King's Landing, and they just hide it and get dragged.
But you see, they'd be found out because the horse would have exposed skeleton ribs. You could see them hiding in the rib cage because they didn't put flesh on it. That's just not what they're used to.
What's funny, you say that considering that the whole of Robert's Rebellion is literally just the Helen of Troy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Literally, now that's confirmed that Rhaegar and Lyanna, they actually loved each other, and this whole thing started because of them two. So, yep, it's literally Troy.
Because in that flashback, they make him
look like Viserys. He looks like Viserys.
Yeah, very, very much. It was very weird. And was it the same actor
It wasn't.
It wasn't
'Cause
the
I
same
looked it up
actor.
and I'm like, is it him? It's like, it's not him.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was just sort of a nod. They figured, you know what, we killed him off pretty brutally. We might as well give him another job.
We'll give him like 10 minutes. We'll give him like 4 seconds of screen time 6 years later. That'll make up for it.
That'll
I
that'll
think, isn't
he
I
gets
think
to keep
he's
the
like
screen
related
actors.
to, I forget who is he related to. It's kind of funny who it is. I need to. He's like an ancestor of Charles. Yeah, he's the ancestor of Charles Dickens.
Oh no way! That's cool. That's cool.
Well, that's
I
why
just remember like reading like, oh yeah, he's related to like someone who was like, oh yeah, him. It's like, that's kind of funny.
that's why his writing was so good.
Yeah, it wasn't him, but like, I think they did it on purpose to make it like they got that Targaryen look.
When they killed him, I wonder if the original line was, "Oh, you've burned the Dickens out of me."
I don't know why that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, Greg. Like that. What? Oh, you burned the things out. What the fuck?
They had to cut it because nobody could say it with a straight face.
I want that like a mash car. Every time someone's been burnt in Game of Thrones, you burned the tickets out of me, dumped them for it.
I'm just sad for the flashbacks. They couldn't get Sean Bean. They couldn't bring Sean Bean back to play the young Ned Stark.
Well, that wouldn't have made like he's.
It's only like 16 years.
Yeah, but it's still been like 7 years since
Yeah.
season 1, and so I think the fact that I'm sure they were just like, we could, but we would have to spend either a lot of time and money on makeup or CG. I mean, I can understand them being like, it's not necessarily worth, because he isn't the central focus of that scene. Like he's there, but like, you know, nothing. I don't.
I mean, like
think
in season in season 6, like remember in season 6, there was the whole scene with the young Ned, and he's like at the Tower of Joy fighting.
Tower of Joy.
Like I only because that now if they want to do a Robert's Rebellion like a little like mini series, they kind of can't because they already cast this guy.
That's who you have to pick. Yeah. I mean, it was only 16 years ago, but 16 years of living in Winterfell is like 62 normal years. I'm surprised it doesn't look older.
Well, it's like Sean Bean has never exactly looked young to begin with, you know, let alone in
Yeah,
this.
I'm pretty sure he was born looking about 45.
Yeah, he has that Patrick Stewart face. Like, he hasn't aged in like 50 years, but he's always just looked really old.
5 o'clock shadow in kindergarten. Good guy though, good actor.
Oh yeah,
I
damn
love
good
seeing
actor.
him. Love
It's
seeing him.
just
in
a shame he just always has to die in everything he's in. Give the
Yeah,
poor guy a break.
it's funny because he was he was in what, the Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah,
And
he didn't
that
die.
movie was and the funny thing is you thought he did. They kind of made it look like he might have, or I'm sorry, they made it look like he might have been the bad guy, and then it turned out he wasn't. Spoiler warning for Jupiter Ascending, although you probably shouldn't see that movie anyway. But yeah, it's interesting that they make him out to be secretly the bad guy, and the twist is that he's not.
And don't forget, he's also in the 2 Silent Hill movies and didn't die in either of them.
He was in Silent Hill movie? I thought he was a respected actor. Why would he do those movies?
And in the 2nd Silent Hill movie, Kit Harington is also in it.
Oh wait.
Oh.
Wait, there were Silent Hill movies?
Yeah, the first one was decent. The second one was complete trash.
Oh,
When was the second one? Was that during Game of Thrones? Or was it much before?
2012, I believe.
Yeah.
So it was during Game of Thrones. I know that for sure.
It literally debuted while an episode of Game of Thrones was on, so nobody went to see it.
Good. No one should have saw that.
Who knows? Maybe I'll check it out one day.
Oh, great.
Don't.
Save yourself.
Or I'll
Save
just
yourself.
rewatch Game of Thrones.
There you go. Spend your money. Spend your money better that
There
way.
you go.
Watch the HBO short film 7 Days in Hell.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
Given the $9,000 I've given it to HBO just to keep Game of Thrones on.
I think at this point most people just do that just to keep Game of Thrones on.
Yeah, and you know what?
There's others, but you've also got Silicon Valley, which is probably not going to be good anymore because reasons.
Yeah. I'm not.
And then-
Well, I'm
I'm
sure,
not a huge fan of that show.
TJ Miller's very, looking forward to his busting film career, starting with the Emoji Movie. What a great first pick.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he'll get lots of other calls. Most of them are death threats, but but what matters is he's getting calls, which is a shame because I like him.
HBO's got Westworld.
Westworld here is good.
Westworld is a show that it's on my ever-growing list of things I need to watch, which is that list is getting far too long. I should watch something else, but it's like, I'll just watch more Star Trek. It's fine.
And there's a new Star Trek you got to add to that.
Well, you got to watch the first couple episodes and then see where it goes from there.
Well, no, I think with this one, I think CBS, they're airing the first one on TV, but then you have to pay for their new app to get the rest of it. And I'm like, I ain't paying for an app just for one show that may not be good.
That's CBS.
What are you talking about? It's not on CBS. It's on Fox.
What Star Trek?
Because Seth MacFarlane showed the Orville.
Yeah, that's the Orville.
Star Trek.
That show looks so fucking cheap. That looks like a bad YouTube skit.
The Orville is to the new Star Trek as Galaxy Quest was to the old Star Trek.
But people like Galaxy Quest more
than that's true because I really like that movie.
I mean, again, hands up, I have not seen Orville, and the critical reception has been pretty good. I just remember seeing the first trailer thinking I didn't laugh at any of the jokes, and it just looked cheap. But again, I
wonder if that's sort of
so I can't really comment on it.
I wonder if that's going to be the point, though. I wonder if it's supposed to look.
Possibly,
it's that's why I say I bring up a Galaxy Quest. I think it's supposed to not look like a super polished sci-fi show, but almost a parody of one.
Well, yeah. Well, I think also Galaxy Quest was kind of a relatively cheap-ish mid-90s movie, so CG wasn't exactly a strong point back then. Although I will say that rock monster in Galaxy Quest still looks pretty good.
That was Grignock. I think that's what it was.
Galaxy Quest is I want to go watch Galaxy Quest. That movie's fucking amazing.
Yeah, maybe you guys need to do a discussion on that movie.
Just a 2-hour podcast on Galaxy Quest.
I'd be down with Galaxy Quest. People in the chat, if you want to see us come back talking about Galaxy Quest, let us know. I'd be down with that. Galaxy Quest is great.
Right next to a pup named Scooby Doo.
Yeah, we're gonna put that in our Patreon. If we get a certain amount, then we'll unlock a pup named Scooby Doo podcast.
Yeah. we'll air. You guys can air every episode where Red Herring was the bad guy.
I think there's I get that. I think there's one episode where Fred doesn't suspect him. I think it's the one episode where it is actually him.
Well, wasn't it I thought it was the very first episode where it was actually Red Herring, and then all the other ones it wasn't.
Maybe
I thought that's what it was.
I had not watched a pup named Scooby Doo in like 20 years. I do not remember anything about it.
I mean, Game of Thrones is like the Red Herring, the show, so it works. I mean, the Red Wedding is a red herring.
It's also really bloody, but
slightly bloodier than Scooby Doo was. Well, only slightly bloodier and more violent
than the original James Gunn Scooby Doo.
Oh god, yeah. Let's make it R-rated and put in a bunch of adult jokes in a '60s cartoon. Good job, James Gunn. But I think I can't think of anything else to say other than just I'm really looking forward to the last season. And I will say this: I am glad they're not prolonging this as long as they can. I'm glad they're not putting in a Walking Dead, just stretching this shit out. I'm glad they are gonna.
Yeah. But that's because Walking Dead still got almost 100 episodes, issues of book to do, while this has got 2 unreleased books. So
the show is starting to overstay its welcome now.
Walking Dead displays the same plot points every season.
Every season it's just and we're gonna spend 3 episodes with one character doing nothing the whole episode, and it's
Did someone say Andrea?
Rick goes too far, and someone has to be like, "Calm down, Rick," and he's like, "Okay, I'm good again."
And then someone bad shows up and kills someone. It's like, okay, now we got to fight him. And then it's like, oh yeah, there's zombies on this show.
It is I used to love that show, but it got to the point where it was too formulaic. I was like, I
I was so excited for like the past season because I love Negan in the comics and Jeffrey Dean Morgan's amazing at Negan.
Oh, he's amazing.
The show just went straight like. I think like the first half of the season, only 3 episodes actually meant anything, and then the second half, only like 4 of them did. And it's like they're all like they just drag the whole show out so long. It's just like get it, and so many of the episodes are like 90 minutes long, and it's like what?
Walking Dead is a show that could use the kind of 10 episode seasons because that would force them to be more again economic with their storytelling.
Yeah.
So like again, I think the biggest thing is, you know, as Stephen said, normally they have like a big Walking Dead normally has like those big action episodes, and then they'll have like a random episode where like, oh look, there's like Glenn's off somewhere, let's follow him. I remember they did that after the big assault on the prison, where I think we had 2 episodes with the governor. Why the fuck did we have 2 episodes with the governor for?
Yeah, that was there was a big chunk of time there where I remember season 3 was we would go back to Woodbury and there'd be almost whole episodes about Woodbury and the governor, and the episode would start and I would realize that it was a Woodbury episode and I was on Twitter. It was time to. I was just sort of half pay attention.
A lot of the best episodes of the early Walking Dead were just like 1 or 2 characters. Like there's the one where he met up with Morgan again, and that was one of the best. In one of the most recent seasons, where it's like a 90-minute episode just about Morgan, and that one was surprisingly really good. And then there's like other ones like there's the show can like do some good stuff, but then you got like what is it the one where it's the quote unquote the 2 people who die when Negan kills those 2 people, and it's a whole episode about just that. And it's like you only need to do this for like half of an episode. You didn't need to spend a whole episode on this.
Yeah, there's a lot of and it's filler. You know, there really is no other way.
It's really expensive filler, but yeah.
Yeah,
well, not really. The show isn't that expensive. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it's not that expensive.
There's not a whole lot of, especially when they do non-Walker episodes. You know, there's not a lot of visual effects they have to pay for or anything. It's not like there's a ton of CG.
Like Jeffrey Dean Morgan's the most expensive thing they've got.
Yeah, pretty much. His jacket probably costs more.
I would say expensive because even when there's no Walkers, I'd still say Walking Dead is still one of the best looking shows. Like there's clearly money put onto the production value on that show. I mean, like you compare Walking Dead to anything on the CW, and like the Walking Dead, the Walking Dead looks like a movie, even with no walkers. Whereas CW shows just look like bad Spanish.
I think the difference with that is that they pay for they put so much money into like 2 or 3 sets, and they just keep using those same sets.
Well, I'm just talking about even the lighting.
No,
like,
you're talking about the cinematography of it all, and they
You also don't need money for that. Like if you care and like know how to shoot things, you don't need a lot of money.
Yeah,
to make something look good.
It depends. You know, there's a lot of sorry to stray away from the Game of Thrones here, although Game of Thrones does this too. Game of Thrones does this too a little bit, where you could shoot everything and have all of your scenes. But if somebody comes in, you know, for Walking Dead, it works very well. If somebody comes in and says, hey, why don't you kind of give everything a very, very light, grainy texture? You know, give everything this sort of gritty appearance to it. Somebody there is thinking, because that's what the whole thing is supposed to look like. You know, if you shoot a show that's supposed to be Walking Dead and Game of Thrones, supposed to be down and dirty, you know, everybody's covered in filth half the time, and the whole thing is 4K resolution, 120 hertz. It kind of hurts the presentation of the show when it looks so clean and it's not supposed to.
Yeah.
You know, and
which
that's
what
what
the CW
happens.
shows are.
CW shows you to do that. If you guys
they look so bad, they look so cheap by comparison.
If you guys used to watch WB, when WB was trying to do a lot of like they did Birds of Prey.
That show is terrible.
Yeah, that show is awful. But it's a good, if you're familiar with that show, you understand, like you see the cinematography, and that's the way all of their shows used to look. No matter what kind of show it was, and it just didn't serve the show very well. You know, you turn it on and you think, the hell am I looking at? The first time I turned on Game of Thrones, I thought, ooh, what am I looking at?
The only plus Birds of Prey had was they used Mark Hamill's voice for the one appearance of the Joker. That's the only good thing Birds of Prey ever did.
But yeah, there's a lot to be said about cinematography and what you can do right and what you can do wrong. And Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, these are two shows that it's hard to talk about one and not the other.
I mean, they came out relatively around the same time.
You know,
Yeah,
Walking Dead
I
was
think-
like Halloween. I think Walking Dead was like Halloween 2010, and then Game of Thrones was like spring 2011.
yeah, you know,
I think those two are like the two like most watched shows on TV still.
they're definitely the
Yep.
two best shows on TV in my opinion. You know, and then it's funny that we started out Walking Dead being worried about zombies, and now we're getting to the point where we're worried about people, and with Game of Thrones we're worried about people, and now
Yeah.
we're worried about zombies.
Well, ice zombies. They're scary.
Yeah,
They're much scarier than regular zombies. They're
yeah.
ice zombies.
Even though realistically, if they were just regular zombies, they should be frozen like a rock.
Well, this is also magic, so
Oh,
there's
so,
straight up magic in this.
Magic
so.
and dragons and time traveling.
so a wizard did do it this time.
But I think at this point, aside from just again, like I'm just saying, I can't wait for the next season. I can't really think of much else to say about Game of Thrones. Can you two?
Oh, I can, but we've been in that.
yeah.
We've been at
Yeah,
it
we
for
could,
an
but
hour
it's
and a
like-
half. So
Yes. So, Greg, please tell the people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Oh, I am on Twitter at SilverGreg78. I have a Facebook, which is Uncle Silver, but don't worry about it because my Facebook is basically just my Twitter posts fed over to my Facebook page. And I am on YouTube at Uncle Silver Gaming.
Nice.
Yay.
So yeah, Stefan, but since you're in charge, lead us out because I'm lost. I'm not sure where I'm going.
Valar Morghulis, a Lannister always pays his debts. Hold the door. I drink and I know things. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
This is Jon Snow.
Oh, and what was the it's Valar Morghulis, and what's the response?
Volar Doharis.
Yeah, here we go. all men must die. All men must serve.
If people in the comments let us know if you enjoyed this. Maybe we can come back and do something with Game of Thrones next year as well.
Hey, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead. Come back for Walking Dead talk.
Walking
Yeah.
Dead.
100 episodes. 100 episodes.
100
Walking
episodes
Dead.
coming out.
It's 100 episodes. Yeah.
If you,
www.walkingdead.com.
you know, maybe you guys want us to talk about Project Runway. You know.
Say yes to the dress narrated by some himself.